Welcome back to TV Toastmasters. I'm Beth Genly, your host for this segment, and I'm also president of Toastmasters for Speaking Professionals this year, and we meet at a new time now. We meet at 11:45 on the second and fourth Tuesdays in Beaverton. We would love to have you come and visit. Today, I'm joined by Jon Turino, whom I've known for a bunch of years now, and he has a wonderful story to tell of how he completely reinvented his life. Jon Turino, welcome.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate you having me here today.
I'm very excited because your story is so much fun. When I met you a bunch of years ago, you were doing something quite different than what you're doing now. Tell us a little about that.
Well, that's correct. My background has always been in high-tech marketing and training and things like that. And in August of 2015, I had a friend ask me to marry her and her fiancé.
That must have surprised you.
It was yes, and I thought to myself, what do I know about marrying people? And the knowledge was very small, but she suggested I get online ordained. We downloaded script and vows. We went over them a few times, and then did the actual ceremony. It was done at the Sentinel Hotel downtown. That time it was the governor, in the beautiful room. It's the library room there, gorgeous place. And we had 300 guests. We had 7 bridesmaids, 7 groomsmen, 2 flower girls, and a ring bearer. No partridges and pear trees, but a lot of other people.
Big enough without
It's probably the largest wedding I have actually ever done, even to this date, 4 years later. But so there was no room for error, but it went well. I loved doing it. She loved the way I did it, and it created a brand new career for me. It was like, I like doing this. This is fun. These are happy occasions. And so she recommended me some people. And that year, 2015, I ended up doing 15 more weddings just on word-of-mouth referrals.
Reward of mouth. I love that. I'm going to start using that.
Yes,
rewarding.
Reward of mouth. Yeah, that's how it worked. Yeah.
So when I first met you, you were doing high-tech stuff and high-tech
Correct.
training and sales.
Right.
How did that set you up to make this surprising transition?
Well, I think the ability to make sales presentations, the ability to do technical presentations. I spent many years in Europe doing sales and technical presentations there. So I had the skills to be able to speak in front of a lot of people without freezing up.
Okay, because I was wondering how the tech part fits. I mean, I'm a pretty techie girl, but I'm
Right.
not really seeing a wedding as a techie presentation.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Well, it actually is, because you have to work with the client up front, make sure that you understand, do they want a religious presentation or a non-religious presentation, wordsmith a bit. For example, I had a conversation yesterday with a potential client, and the question came up about the introduction of who gives this bride. Well, in today's day and age, most brides don't want to be treated like property and given by whoever walks them up the aisle. So sometimes we use accompanies, sometimes we use presents. So there's a lot of editing that goes on as we go through these things. There's miking up at the beginning of the process. There are a lot of video cameras going on sometimes. There's regular photography that says, like, will the officiant please get out of the first kiss, right? So that you don't photobomb that. These are things that you learn early on, because if you work with the photographers and the videographers and the DJs, you learn all these things. And I've always been, thankfully, a quick learner. But I think having the high-tech background, having the speaking background, gave me the confidence, really, to be able to say, oh, I can do that, even though I've never done it before. Because there were a lot of things that I did that I'd never done before in my life.
Well, and you also have that beautiful speaking voice, so I'm
Oh,
sure
well,
that
thank you so
that
much.
doesn't hurt at all.
Thank you so much.
So tell us some stories about some weddings that you really loved, and maybe a couple that are unusual.
Well, let me think. I loved that first one. It was wonderful. I did a wedding last year where the bride English was her second language and not very good at second language. And her fiance and the DJ got together and they had her do her vows in her own language with music behind it. And so they had recorded that prior to the ceremony. And when they played it in the venue, they played it loud, and it was goosebumpy. I mean, her voice was so beautiful in her own language. The music was just wonderful. I mean, that's probably the closest I've come to crying at a wedding where I was the officiant. I mean, it was just beautiful.
That's so surprising, because you would think when it was recorded that it would take some of the emotion away, but they were able to
You would
fill
think
it
so,
right in.
but it fit right in. It was just perfect. And I made the comment. I said, and our bride has recorded her vows in her own language and would like to now have those played. So it was set up in such a way that the guests knew what was going to happen, and it was a normal part of the process. And to me, that's kind of the secret of doing these things well, is to, no matter what happens, make it look like it was part of the plan. I mean, like, oh, the ring bearer threw the pillow with the rings in the pond. How do we go around that, right?
How did you?
Actually, I've never had the pond one, but I have had a ring bearer get halfway up the aisle and then throw the pillow up to the best man or the groom. And so I always recommend to my clients, have the rings in the best man's pocket and let the ring bearer, usually a young one, carry a pillow that has either fakes or the boxes or whatever, so that you don't end up interrupting the entire ceremony. I mean, what people remember about a wedding is the bride coming up the aisle and the kiss. And everything else kind of goes by the wayside unless there's something silly that happens, at which time it becomes a giggle if you treat it as a giggle. So it boils down to going with the flow and rolling. I mean, I did one at the Troutdale House, for example, and it's a beautiful venue. They have inside and outside gardens, but the trains that go from Portland to the Gorge run past there.
Oh my.
And they're only like 100 yards from the venues. And when one of those goes by, you do not speak. You just wait until the train goes by. And the first one we did, the first train came by and the bride was like devastated because we had to stop. And so while the train was going by, I whispered to her a few things about, don't worry about it, breathe, we'll get through this. We laughed and giggled a little bit. I made a few gestures to the audience and the guests, and so that train went away and we started again. And we got about a third of the way through or halfway through, and another train came in. And it was like, oh my goodness. That was my first 3-train wedding. There were 3 trains. So now when I do ceremonies at that venue, I always warn the clients that, we have to be a little careful about that. Otherwise it's a beautiful venue, and if you're inside, you don't have that issue. But a lot of weddings in the Portland, Vancouver area from July, August, September, even into October outside, because that's when we get nice weather. I've had flower girls who stood at the back after their dads have showed them how to put a pedal on their fist and pop the pedal like that. There was one wedding in Independence where there were 2 flower girls, one of which was the daughter of the best man, and he had showed her that trick the night before. So here comes the bride coming from the barn out to the garden setting, and it's time for the 2 flower girls to come up. First one goes out, putting the flowers out, very nice, and the other one's back there trying to pop petals. So the best man had to come down and get his daughter and get her up there. So, and then the strangest one was the guy who wrote a 3-page set of vows. 3 8.5 by 11 set of vows. He told the entire story, I think, from before he was born to when he met his bride and all of the other stuff. And 3 pages of that did not go over very well with his guests. So I try to counsel my clients, let's stick to a paragraph or maybe 2. Unless everybody, I mean, I've had clients where they can get away with a page full, especially if it's funny. Because weddings don't have to be as serious as a lot of people think. Oftentimes, they can be formal without being solemn. They can be hilarious on purpose. They can be funny, not on purpose, like the Troutdale thing with the trains. But it's nice to have them lighthearted, and it's nice to have them so that the bride and the groom actually enjoy what's going on. And I had a point to that, which I managed.
Sounds to me like it's time for us to take a little bit of a break. I actually have some questions for you about that.
Okay, super.
So let's just take a moment for our station break, and we will be back to you in just a few minutes with Jon Turino and more stories about weddings and reinventing your life.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Harmon. I'm a member of TV Toastmasters. In this club, we have an opportunity to practice speaking before the camera as well as running the equipment room. If you're interested in being interviewed on TV Toastmasters or becoming a member, please go to toastmasters.org and look for us, or simply search for TV Toastmasters on the web.
Welcome back to TV Toastmasters. I'm Beth Genly, and I'm still here with Jon Turino. And right before our break, Jon was talking about how weddings don't have to be super solemn, super serious. And what that brought up for me was, I bet you have some great stories about weddings that were very different than what we think of a wedding as being. So what have you got going there?
Well, usually it deals with the vows. Although sometimes it deals with the theme. I've done weddings where people have had a Star Wars theme, and the bridesmaids and groomsmen and the bride and groom were dressed in Star Wars kind of costumes. Steampunk is another one that is fairly popular. I'm getting ready to do one where the bride and the groom are avid fisher people. So there are things in the sermon about how they are hooked on each other and how they will always net each other's fish. I've done weddings where the vows included things like, and I will always bake cookies for you. And one where the groom was an actual comedian and all of his guests knew it. So we had a dozen bullets in there that just were crazy, silly things that he promised to always do for his bride. So as long as it's planned and everybody, the bride and the groom and I and everybody knows exactly what's going to happen, they can be funny, they can be themed, they can be lighthearted, they can be laughter and giggles. In fact, most weddings end up with some laughter and giggles. The bride or the groom will do something like, when I say, will you please repeat after me? I, bride, take you groom for your lawfully wedded wife or lawfully wedded husband. And it comes out of the bride or groom's mouth as lawfully wedded life or something like that.
That's really waffle.
And so you can either decide that that's going to be a problem, or you can say something like, and would you like syrup on that, or pancakes with it? I had one wedding where the best man's phone rang at the moment I had said it's time for the ring exchange. So that's not exactly the ring I was talking about.
Yeah, good for you.
And the bride's mother afterwards came up and said, thank you so much for that little joke. I was getting ready to cry because that had happened. So if you can roll with the punches and things happen, grooms and brides choke up. You'd be surprised how many more grooms choke up than brides. So I always carry tissues, clean tissues in my back pocket for the case of that. When those things happen.
Okay, so I have to back up about a minute and a half, because I'm
Okay.
still visualizing you as Darth Vader at the
Oh.
Star Wars. What did you wear?
I actually normally just wear a dark suit and
Okay,
a tie.
okay.
If it's a religious wedding, I'll sometimes wear a stole. It's really up to the what the bride and the groom would like to have, and whether their guests and parents are religious or non-religious. What I wear. The silliest I ever wore was a pair of shorts and a polo shirt, because it was a surprise wedding at a barbecue, and the host, the bride and the groom, did not want their guests to know that there was a wedding going to happen. So if I just showed up in a suit, it would have looked, why is he in a suit at a barbecue that's been going on since noon? The wedding was at 5 o'clock, so it was, needless to say, a few beers had been imbibed by most of the guests and the bride and groom. But we got the paperwork signed, and it went off just fine. So, but normally, yeah, I'm normally in a suit and tie, and if it's religious, I wear the stole.
I do know one wedding. You're reminding me of a story I hadn't thought about in a while. I had some acquaintances who were actually shanghaied into being married. They had been together for years and years and years, and their friends decided that he was being commitment averse for no good reason, and they shanghaied the guy. They set up the entire wedding and said, "You're getting married now," and he went along with it. He's been married, I don't know, 15, 20 years now, but he actually wasn't expecting to get married that day. But his friend said,
funny.
You have to.
Yeah, now,
very unusual.
I've never had one like that,
Yeah.
but I have had weddings where, for example, I did one in Hillsborough a few months ago, where the folks had lived together for 40 years, and they were both in their 60s, and finally decided, well, I guess it's about time we should get married. We've lived together for 40 years. It was just... And most people today, I think, have lived together before they decide to get married. And some have even bought houses together and had kids together, and so it's an interesting dynamic. But no matter what happens, and the reason I love doing weddings is because they're always happy occasions. Mm-hmm. They're just, the bride is happy, the groom is, I mean, they're nervous occasions too. Everybody's a little nervous, especially standing in front of guests, whether it's only a half a dozen or it's 300. But they're happy. And to me, being able to facilitate that happiness and being able to pronounce them husband and wife and give them the permission to do that first kiss in public as husband and wife, it's just so emotionally satisfying that I just love doing what I do, and it became really a new career, a new vocation for me. I gave up all the other stuff. All I do now is marry people, and I love it. In fact, my tagline is, "I'd love to marry you," and I get a lot of crazy comments on that tagline.
Oh, I bet. Well, okay, so many of us have thought, I'd love to reinvent myself. I don't like what I'm doing now, or I'm done with what I'm doing now, but I don't really know what to do next, or maybe I do know what to do next, but I'm pretty scared to do it. So you have any advice for those folks?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
At my age, I have advice for a lot of folks. Some of it, free, and that's how they take it in terms of value. But I had a mentor many, many years ago who said, if you ever want to be anything in life, you have to get rid of your fear. And you have to visualize what you want to be as if it had already happened. So it was a combination of get rid of the fear and visualize what's happening. Visualize not when or if, but as if it's real. So visualize yourself and then couple it with a feeling, an emotion. Something was good, lying on the beach, winning an award, getting married, presuming that was a happy occasion. And then, so you visualize it, you couple it with that feeling, and you live it. You make a mental picture of how it is when it is. Not as when it's going to be, but make it real now, and it will become real then. So you need to inspire yourself. You need to get rid of that fear. It's not easy, but it's doable. I mean, I think that the 4 or 5 times I've changed my career, I changed careers from marketing and high tech in the technology world into insurance and financial services when the dot-bomb boom died back in 2002. And I did that until 2011 when I moved into starting my own high tech marketing and sales consulting work. And then when it came time to become a minister and a wedding officiant, something that I had previously known nothing about but discovered how rewarding it was like, okay, what do I have to do here to succeed at this? I have to learn to do it right. I have to learn to do it professionally. I have to market myself. So it's wedding wire time and thumbtack time and the knot and things like that. Lots of Facebook, social media stuff. So a lot of it is running a business just like you'd run any business. You need to do the marketing and the sales and the finance and the accounting and make sure it's priced right and stuff like that.
Is that what your book's about?
Well, actually, the book talks about some of that. This is a book that I put together way back in 2015 called Inspiration Now.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote it because I was so pleased with what had happened to me that I wanted to share that example with people. So it talks a lot about visual image formation. It talks about how to achieve success, happiness, and it doesn't try to define success. It doesn't say, for example, success is making a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't make a lot of money doing weddings, but I'm happier than a clam doing weddings, and I make some extra money. So each person has to define their success for themselves and has to sit back and say, okay, and I think millennials are doing this a lot, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing sometimes. What do I want to do? What do I want to do with my life? And making time to do that self-assessment so that you don't end up in burnout. I mean, you consult people on how not to burn out, right? Mm-hmm. I can't see myself ever burning out doing weddings. I just love them so much. I mean, each one is new. It's like when I used to do design for test seminars. I did that seminar 2 days at a time, 1,000 times, and it never got old because it was always a new group. The weddings never get old because it's always a new bride and groom, sometimes a new venue, new people. And so I have that vision of how it went so well the first time that I can always back up on that if anything goes wrong. And if you do that visualization and you have the confidence in yourself and you make that picture and make it feel and make it real, there's nothing you can't do.
Wow. All right. So Inspiration Now for sure. So in the few seconds we have left, is there a website that people can go to for more information?
People can go to the website. There's more information available at yourminister.org, one word, yourminister.org. There's more information on Facebook and the Knot and Wedding Wire and things like that.
Wonderful.
So,
well, that was an amazing set of stories. Thank you, Jon Turino, for joining us tonight. I am Beth Genly with TV Toastmasters, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Taylor, and I'm with TV Toastmasters. My home group is Feedbackers in Beaverton, Oregon. I first joined Toastmasters for a couple reasons. I was nervous. I had trouble speaking in front of others. I needed some help. And when I joined Toastmasters, not knowing what to expect, I learned several things. One, it gave me the confidence to speak in front of others. I learned how to take constructive criticism. I benefited from that. That benefit was the confidence to get a job. When I took the suggestions in the club, when I started speaking in front of a group and remained speaking through my role, doing table topics, getting topics that you're unaware, learning how to think on your feet, learning how to speak on your feet. I first started working managing the Berkshire Hathaway account. I started as a back office role, not the face of the company. It didn't take long until I was dealing directly with the executives. Today I give executive briefings for Verizon Enterprise in the highest level in the enterprise space. And I'm grateful, and I owe all of that to Toastmasters. Thank you.